I would like to be able to see other realities. I have had glimpses through the kind of curtain opens for a second. I've had glimpses of other things, but...
Do you think your art does that?
That's the goal.
Are we one? Are we infinite? Are we temporary?
Our guest tonight is an absolutely incredible filmmaker who makes very deep, very emotional films. Whether comedy or whether drama, there's always some deep insight into the human spirit in Ari Gold's films. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And also, he's an amazing musician too.
I'm an acceptable musician on ukulele and occasionally piano. This is such a beautifully muted piano that you put some towels and stuff like that in there to make it really lush and warm. And my brother and I came in here for the brother doing the score for our movie on this very piano. And you haven't seen the movie yet, but it carries a spirit into the film.
I love that. I can't wait to see the movie. And the funny thing is about the spirit of this piano is there's a story with that, and then I'm going to link it to your thing. So I actually wanted to buy a piano at one point, and I found this guy on Craigslist who was selling used Steinways. And I went and I found this, and he had this gorgeous piano, and I played it, and instantly it was like, this is my piano. And he's like, no, it's not. I sold it. I was so heartbroken. I was like, oh my God, I've never found a piano like this, because this piano has exactly what you noticed, which is it's got big resonance, but it's also got like this kind of like warmth and... Yeah,
this intimacy that it has is quite special.
It's really, really unique. And I was so upset. I was like, oh my God. Anyway, then I went home all defeated and everything. And I went through looking Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist again. Nothing. And then suddenly one day I saw the same piano. Not the actual same, but like the same model.
Yeah.
I think this one's maybe 2 years less old than the other one was. This is from like 1957, I think.
Oh, okay. It's newer than I thought. But yeah, okay.
Yeah. And anyway, I went and played it. It was like, wow, it sounds the same. It's got the vibe. I was so excited. And then like my whole of my Yin album, the classical piano album I made like a few years ago, I did on this piano. And then it was amazing when you guys came in and played it. You felt the same thing. Like this piano has a spirit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. In the movie, we wanted it to carry it's a Steinway, so it's different than the way we described it. We wanted it to have this intimacy, but we wanted it to almost feel like it came from a French film, but also with a little bit of jazz, because in the movie it's a single shot movie where me and my twin brother are hunting through the streets of San Francisco looking for a song and looking for love and looking for our father who's dying. And it all takes place over 90 consecutive minutes. But because it's this neighborhood that was the center of the beatniks and the center of, spaghetti and poetry and jazz, going back to the 50s and earlier, we wanted to have a bit of a kind of like jazz French type of vibe, even though the music is not jazz at all. We wanted something that has a bit of that flavor, and so this piano, the main theme of the movie is played on this piano, and it's actually a figure from the song that is kind of the climactic song that my brother plays at the end of the movie, and it's the guitar figure reinterpreted for piano that became like the kind of the core leitmotif of the movie. So
Wow, that's so cool.
yeah.
About this film, before the film there was a book, correct?
Yeah, so, well, actually the book came out after the movie was shot, but I started making a book. Well, I started exchanging poetry with my dad by U.S. mail during COVID, and my brother also was sending poems to our dad by mail, and our dad would send poems back, and it became this kind of troubadour like literary competition / correspondence where we were able to say things to each other that we didn't always say in real life through poetry. And so I was putting together the book, including a lot of photographs and, making it not quite a coffee table book, but a book that would have some aesthetic feeling like you're dipping into a desk full of letters type of vibe. And it occurred to me that for years I had been wanting to do a movie about my relationship with my twin brother. And I went to a festival in Spain that was organized by a director friend from Belarus. And he had invited me to this festival because he had a bunch of filmmaker friends make $50 movies, and he was showing them all, and they were all like based on weird news stories from Belarus. So I went and showed my little $50 movie, a 3-minute movie, not a full-length movie, but and then my Belarusian friend Nikita Lavretsky showed his movie, which was a 2-hour movie shot on an iPhone where he and his girlfriend pretended that they were meeting for the first time, and that was the whole movie.
Wow.
And after seeing it, I said to him, this is the key that I've been looking for. I've been wanting to make a movie with my twin brother for many, many years. We play music together. We have a, sometimes beautiful, sometimes combative, sometimes, dangerously codependent relationship where we're often trying to fix each other. And I tend maybe a little bit more to be in the fixer mode where I'm aggressively trying to fix him in a way that sometimes is helpful and sometimes is very unhelpful. But I'd written a few different movies, and he would reject them, or they would be too expensive, and it never ended up working out. And we also, as a duo, playing in this kind of Flight of the Conchords style mix of comedy and more serious songs, we'd done these performances, but everything had kind of petered. We had never really made anything of our kind of artistic connection as brothers, other than me making music videos for his songs or him composing music for my films. We hadn't done anything really about the brotherhood. And I said to my Belarusian friend, oh, this is how to do it. You do it like all at once, and you just do it in, the time it takes to shoot. You create something that can work, a story that can work within the confines of, 90 minutes of real life. And then you don't have to try to stuff in like, well, what part of our relationship should we do? Or should there be fantasies of musical shenanigans in other countries? And there could be fantasy sequences, but we should do something about our childhood too. And it's like all these burdens of how do you fit a life into a story become a lot easier when you just say, well, what if it's just 90 minutes of life? So I wrote a story that would fit in 90 minutes of real life, and pitched it to my brother and pitched it to our dad to act in at age 99. And very, very quickly after that, we filmed the movie. And Ethan, my brother, didn't want to do it right away because he was in Europe and he was kind of enjoying being there. And I pressured him a bit because our father being 99, I just didn't know how long he was going to be around. And as it turned out, he died 8 weeks after filming. So
that's remarkable. Yeah. Was he sick, or was it just?
He wasn't sick, but he was 99. And things happen, and there had been a couple year period when, there all kinds of different scares, whether it's like a hip scare or a low sodium. He goes to the hospital because he's, suddenly weak and he can't get to the bathroom, and then he's but he had this incredible ability to bounce back, and he'd be on death's door, and then we'd get out of the hospital, and then he'd be happily reading the New York Times in his study in the morning, and wanting to take walks and flirt with baristas at the coffee shop. So but nonetheless, he was 99, but I have to say, I hoped and I thought he was going to be around. Somehow we just assumed, given his strength and longevity, and his mind was still completely sharp, great sense of humor, storytelling. I thought for sure he'd make it to 100, and the plan was to release the poetry book when he turned 100 on his birthday, which we ended up doing, but he wasn't there for it. So
it's very sad, but at the same time, it's like what a beautiful genesis of this whole idea from the beginning. And when the first aspect of writing the poems came during COVID, was there any kind of sense in you that, my father's old, this is going to be...
Well, he was never old. You correct you on that.
Okay,
I mean,
on.
one of the poems,
Correct me.
one of the first poems, I kind of ordered the poems to have a bit of a story, but the first one I think of his it's called Diagnosis and Verdict. It's a short one, so I think I remember it. It's... even well into my 80s, I thought I was a young man. I knew I would die someday, but the diagnosis would be he died of the complications of young age.
I love that. I remember you reading that at a book launch. Yeah. So
but I do think his refusal to consider himself an old man may have been part of his longevity. He just refused to, not in the sense of rage against the dying of the light, as I guess Dylan Thomas said, and he raged himself into a gutter at age 36, but in the sense that my dad just maintained his youthful optimism. A youthful optimist. I wasn't optimist. I was very pessimistic when I was 19. So I've become more and more kind of optimistic and cheerful as I've gotten older. But he was always optimistic, and I think that it's one of the things that helped. He walked everywhere, which helped. That they've shown that people who walk, it's one of the best things you can do. But, during lockdown, the other thing that's really important is connection with other people. And during lockdown, he was isolated. And for someone as social as he was, that was, potentially a death sentence. And so me sending him the poems and trying to push him to write, and also saying to him, hey, let's make this into a book. And he was like, oh, well, we can just Xerox it and give it to some friends. I said, no, let's make it into a book. He was a writer, but he had, to some degree, never taken poetry seriously. Not that we were calling it serious, but we wanted it to be I wanted it to be a book. He wasn't really on board with that until I started showing him the way I was going to lay it out. And so he was able to see, before he died, a rough copy of The Galleys and all that. Book's called Father versus Sons, which is a pun because versus is spelled Verses, and the movie is called Brother versus Brother. Same pun.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I meant when I was saying about the age was less about like his demeanor and his youthful spirit. I just meant more like, was there an awareness, a conscious awareness with you that you don't have forever with your father, and there's some...
Or with anyone.
But in this case, I'm specifically saying, like, was there ever a realization in that, in wanting to make you actually sort of create some kind of connective material together that will live on past him and past yourself?
Well, he wasn't thinking of it that way because he never intended for it to be a book.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he went on board with it, but he didn't seem to care about having them published. I got a bunch of them published in a magazine before he died, and or not a bunch of them, but like 6 of them, and it was a huge amount of shenanigans to get it to happen. And it was one nice thing that came of that is that one of his poems was selected for Scribner's Best American Poetry for that year, and so I think he was probably the oldest person to ever get that. So that was cool, and that all of those poems are in the book. But I mean, I was aware that this would be some kind of testament of. I mean, I wasn't thinking about it so much in terms of his death and a legacy, because I really believed he was going to live to see it come out. But I mean, we write a lot about death, or he particularly writes a lot about death in the poems. So.
And how does it feel for you now, like with the finished film, seeing your father in it?
Well, it's strange, I don't watch the movie that much with audiences. Sometimes I'll sit and watch it, or I'll go in and watch my dad. It's very strange because because the movie is this real-time experience. It feels like going into his apartment, because we went into his apartment. So it feels like the real experience of being with him. And so like I'm waiting to do a Q&A, or waiting for the audience to be done watching the movie. I'll be outside sometimes listening, and I know the movie well enough to know like certain lines of my dad's. I'm like, okay, we have 7 minutes left or whatever, but I'm hearing his voice, and then I will dream about him more in that one of the weeks where I'm watching the movie, for sure.
And let's talk about the dreams. Like, how real are dreams for you?
I don't remember my dreams very much. I know, for example, that I have had a dream about him in the last couple of weeks, but I don't really remember what it was. I mean, I do remember one kind of creepy one of maybe like a year ago, where it was something to do with dealing with his body, but then it turned out he was still alive again, but he was like 7 feet tall. These are the kind of the dream type dreams where it's like weird, and I could analyze it, but I want to share the success of the movie with him, and I miss him. And my mother died when I was young in an accident, and there was a lot of unresolved stuff with her because we had a difficult, shall we say, stepfamily experience. Brady Bunch, but not pleasant, or difficult anyway. And because she died before I was able to confront her on the decisions she made, that death was a lot harder because, I was younger, she was a lot younger, and initially the pain was just missing her, and there's just the shock and tragedy and horror of her being killed very, unexpectedly. But what I didn't know at the time was how many years I would be fucked up over the unresolved stuff, like the stuff I had never been able to talk with her about and say, why did you do this? Why did you allow this to happen? These things that I had to then work out in therapy and, transformational training workshops and ayahuasca and everything else, things that I had to work out in that I was suffering from in ways that I didn't understand for a long time. The dreams I had about her were always full of these emotions of like, either she's come back and we're like, where have you been all this time? She says, oh, I was just taking care of some stuff, like, and then she leaves again, and there's almost like a blaseness where she's like, well, I'm going to go again. And it's like, you're going to go again after all this, and now you've come back? I haven't had that with my dad, because everything that needed to be said to my dad, I said, and then everything he needed to say, he said. And I know for my sisters and my brother, I sense that pretty much we all had we had a lot of time with him, and we had a lot of time to have conflict with him and work it out. And you know, the expression you can't teach an old dog new tricks is bullshit, because, you know, he well into his 90s was still taking shit from his kids, where we were calling him out on not listening, even though he was half deaf. But, you know, we would call him out on things, and he would attempt to correct, you know, and that was an amazing thing, that he continued to try to rise to the occasion of the challenges that his kids were presenting to him, in terms of how intimate can you be, and how close can you be, and can you listen to when somebody's talking about their triumphs or their problems or whatever without interrupting. And, you know, all the stuff that we wanted him to be better at. Presence, we wanted him to be better at presence. I mean, all of us had this problem where he was a little bit anxious, and there's an undercurrent of an anxiety, but on the surface, all this gregarious, wonderful storytelling side. But we felt like he wasn't always there and seeing us, but he was trying to be. And so there was nothing, you know, I haven't had the nightmares that I might have if I hadn't confronted him on the things that I wanted to, and we're being able to work all that stuff out. So I'm grateful for the years that I had with him to get to the point where I just have nothing but love for him, and so there's no reason to have a nightmare, you know.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's really nice that it was resolved for you. I saw you had a screening of an unfinished movie you're still working on that I saw, that is related to your mother, and that film itself was also connected to a film you made as a student thesis film, correct?
Mm-hmm. Which your voice is in.
Which my voice is in, which is about your mother. And, you know, first of all, that both films are amazing, but the one that I saw the screening of, the unfinished one, it's just, I told you at the time, but it's stuck with me. It's one of the most powerful storytelling I've seen ever. Like, it just, really, it got me. And
I hope people will be able to see it soon. I think I'm in the home stretch. It's been over a decade. I mean, it's crazy. People don't know how long something can take, but I had a screening of a even closer rough cut last week in New York. I actually parallel screening at a Screen Brother versus Brother, a private, like a secret screening, and then a bunch of people who had heard about Helicopter were like, "Hey, can we see that too?" And so a friend helped arrange a screening room, and yeah, I mean, it's a movie about me dressing as my mother and reenacting her helicopter crash at the command of Alejandro Jodorowsky. I mean, it's a completely insane documentary in terms of its subject, but the idea of it is that I do this insane ritual the way I don't want to call myself a shaman. I'm not a shaman, but in the shamanic tradition, someone goes into the land of the dead, not to wrestle with demons and face death. And if they come out of the ritual alive, then their healing can heal the community. So this is my thesis. My personal thesis is that spending 10 years on this insane movie has taken a lot out of me. I can't even express how much effort has gone into this. But the idea is that the end result is that, yes, it's about my crazy ritual, but the person watching it has a healing through that. And that's the idea.
It really, I mean, for me, it was just so powerful. You know, I didn't not live your experience, but I felt it. And then also in a lot of, it was so, because there's many layers of the film that you haven't touched on in the way that you just described it. You know, some of the stuff that goes into your history, into that Brady Bunch situation that you were talking about. And it's just so powerfully told and so evocative that I think also, like, there are, even though it's so specific to you, there's universal aspects to it as well that other people in their own personal story of life. It's only, you only get to true universal storytelling and art by being specific. The more, in my theory, is the more specific I get, the more universal it becomes. So, you know, switch back to brother versus brother. Nobody has had the experience of being having an identical twin brother who you play music with, and you are wandering the streets of San Francisco looking for your dying father. I mean, maybe there's someone else who's had exactly that experience, but probably not. You know, so, but it's very specific, and because it's based, though it's fictional, it's based on us. All of us are playing characters where the same name as us. So it's, you know, playing with reality. But yes, it's about us in a hyper specific way. But then someone watching it is like, oh, this reminds me of this fight I had with my sister, and I've got to call my mom, and like they connect with what is universal within that specific thing. And of course, especially with Helicopter, spending 10 years on something, and it's, you know, about this trauma and dealing with death and all this, and it's very easy for someone to say, isn't this just a giant narcissistic exercise where you're like navel gazing and you're looking at your own pain and you're looking at your own family trauma? No, well, hopefully not for an audience, but people hearing about the movie, sometimes it's just like, why would I want to see you just kind of masturbating your own trauma? And that's where I'm saying, okay, well, I'm inviting you into this crazy journey, but then you come into the land of the dead with me, and then, you know, hopefully you emerge, and unlike Orpheus, you know when to not look back at Penelope. Is it Penelope or no? Persephone. Persephone, yeah. But that's the idea, is that we go into the land of the dead, or I go into the land of the dead, and then these many years making the movie is to invite others to sit on my shoulder and have that experience too, even though they didn't live it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the film, it's just everything art should be, you know? It's just like, it's everything cinema should be, and it's just so powerful. I mean, part of the reason why I started this podcast, we were talking about it earlier, is because I really feel like true art and true artists, they capture something that cannot be put in words, that we all feel. You know, some people want to call it spiritual, but it doesn't have to be that word. It can be any word. But there's something outside of logic and verbalization that artists can tap into. And unfortunately, in so much of content and media, that's just gone, right? Totally gone. I mean, you know, the experience of a great symphony, or your experience of watching Helicopter, you know, it's necessary to go into the church of the art and you know, give yourself up to God, as it were, and then have the experience. And that the thing that's so sad about the way people, you know, consume content, you know, as the phrase is that, you know, someone's sitting in their bed or on the subway and they're flipping through stuff and they're looking for information or entertainment and you can get a huge amount of information and entertainment doing that. Flip. You flip. I mean, I do it too. I'm not immune to the addiction. But you aren't having the experience at all. You aren't even having a facsimile of it. And that's the thing that's messed up about it, is because people might think, I mean,
I love David Lynch. I'm not the only one who loves David Lynch, but I saw him saying at one point, he said, you think you're seeing the movie on your fucking phone. You're not seeing the movie. But, and flicking his fingers, forgive me for the imperfect. He does curse sometimes when he's really passionate. But I know, right now I'm trying to get money to finish the helicopter movie and trying to find a distributor for Brother versus Brother. And there's some, good percolations of buzz happening, fortunately, and we'll see what happens. But I know for a fact, I can tell when someone calls me how they watched it and if they went to church or not. So if someone says to me, yeah, it was a cool little film, I know that they watched it in pieces. Brother versus Brother, it's a single shot movie. If you don't go into that church and experience it for 90 minutes, you're just going to get the information. Oh, it's a cool little film. There's some fun little scenes. There's some good music. We play some songs. There's some charm. They're going to get that basic information, but they're not going to have the emotional experience. And same thing with Helicopter. Like, okay, so there are this crazy sequences with Helicopter, and you'll get some of the kind of like cocaine impact of those things, but you're not seeing the fucking movie. You're not seeing it. You're literally not seeing it. And that's really sad. And that's, I don't know what to do about that as specifically as a filmmaker. And we were talking before we started about, you as a musician pointing out how hard it is to get someone to focus and actually listen to music without talking over it or without cooking over it or while they're making a phone call and listening in the background. And, the thing about Beethoven's symphony, if you take the content concept of art to its logical conclusion, it's like, okay, any of those symphonies, let's say it's 45 minutes or something, cut it in half. Are you going to have half the experience, or are you going to have 40% of the experience? Okay, cut it in a third. Are you going to experience the symphony? And then keep cutting it up. Now cut it into, let's imagine cutting it into 4 seconds. If you cut one of Beethoven's symphonies into 4-second clips, are you going to have the experience, or are you going to recognize the transcendent that he was reaching towards in his symphony? Obviously, you're not going to experience the transcendent if it's not my favorite symphony, but imagine you break it apart like that. And that's what we're doing to art now, is we're turning it into these little clips, or we're putting it totally in the background. And then you were saying, and I'd love for you to explain or talk a little bit about your emotional experience going to a sound bath.
Okay, so something that I noticed recently is that it's very popular to go to a sound bath, right? And I love sound baths, so I'm not like trying to denigrate that. But a sound bath is, it's not music in the way that you describe Beethoven, right? It's atonal. There is some training that people have to be able to do it in a way where it's healing and whatever. I totally understand and respect that. But it's not the same type of training with the same length of training, say, that a classical musician would be doing in a conservatory for decades, right? And yet, when people go into a sound bath, there's this immediate understanding that it's like a church, like you said. Everyone is silent, and everyone manages to keep their silence for the entire duration. Sometimes it can be 90 minutes, sometimes longer. And yet, in most forms of music these days, it's very, very difficult to get people to even give it 4 minutes of their attention, let alone an hour or more. And I actually think that there's a reason for that. besides just the, you know, the dopamine hit of like social media that we have and our short attention spans. But I think that also the business of art in music became abusive to the muse, let's say, at some point. You know, when they just started like making these albums that had like one hit and the rest of it was just rubbish, you know, slowly over time people lose respect for that medium as an art form because they just know, okay, well, it's just a single. And then when Napster came and then the music industry shifted and then iTunes came and then Spotify came and everything moved to, you know, hit songs and then playlists. And since then it's even moved to like shorter little snips on social media. But tying it back to you again, you see, I think part of what is really incredible in artists, especially today, is when you can be defiantly an artist still and just basically be like, yeah, you know, you all want like little moments and
I'll do a 90-minute shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think that's so good. And I think maybe right now is a time where we're going to transition into it being appreciated more. But I think in the future, when AI is like much more established, I think my hope is that this sort of like auteurish approach is going to actually...
People crave it more. Yeah, I mean, that's my hope as well. And I do think that, you know, little pieces of evidence like people doing, you know, phone-free parties and reading parties, and I mean, those are just on the periphery of society. But like, I mean, Brother versus Brother in particular, you know, is sort of the vibe of it is analog nostalgia to some degree. You know, that's where this piano, being one of the main instruments, works. And you know, in the movie where me and my brother are wandering the streets for 90 minutes with a guitar and a ukulele, trying to entertain people, and then, you know, eventually trying to find our dad. And we're not looking at computers. We're not looking at our phone, other than a couple times we try to call him. But it's an analog 90 minutes for the audience and for the characters. And the bars we go into are bars where people listen to live music. And the cafes are places where people read books. So it's a tour through this old bohemian San Francisco, but it's also, I think, for some, you know, particularly some of the like super young people who have seen the movie are like, oh my God, that looks so amazing to be in that world of like analog. Even though it takes place now, the vibe is analog. And my hope is that, like you said, you know, as video AI gets more and more hard to distinguish from real life, that people will hopefully, or I hope people will seek out real experiences, live theater, you know, things that were like, okay, I know this is human.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's my hope, and I think it's going to happen.
I mean, it's still, you know, when I'm in most bars and restaurants and I hear the music that's playing, and it's the, you know, completely digitized voices, you know, that's this kind of computer deliberately, you know, post auto-tune, but still like whatever they're using now, like Melodyne, like their voices don't sound at all human. And I'm like, how long are people going to be listening to, like, people are still listening to it, and I'm baffled. And I'll see people like singing along to this completely inhuman sounding voice, and I'm like, when is this cultural change going to happen? I hope soon, because it's really annoying.
I remember when Ethan, your brother, made a track like that for fun. It was pretty good.
Mocking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's rewind the clock all the way to the beginning. When was the first time?
Beginning of what?
Prehistory, of course. Now, when was the first time that you had some kind of artistic impulse in your life?
Oh, geez. I mean, I remember being, I think 9, maybe 8, and walking in the school. I remember walking along the wall and really liking walking with my head along the wall and seeing the way the wall looked and feeling like, sort of like it was a movie, you know, just this kind of wall flying by. It felt kind of dramatic and cool. That felt like something like artistic thinking. But I also was writing short stories at the time. I mean, when I was 10, I was writing a novel called The Giant Snail in Brazil. The Giant Snail of Brazil, or anyway, there's a giant snail that's like attacking Brazil, and the hero leads the snail into a salt mine. I think that's why I said it in Brazil, because I read that there were salt mines in Brazil. So,
oh wow, amazing!
But as is probably emblematic of my life in some ways, I never finished it, because while I was like finally writing one of the final chapters, I think, or I don't know how far I'd gotten into it, but there were a lot of pages. I was working on it in recess, and Cindy Klumek comes in and tells me, or I think it tells me that Emily Mackenzie had decided she wanted to go steady, because I'd asked Emily Mackenzie to go steady a few weeks before, and she had said no, or I don't know if I asked her, but I passed a note to, you know. But anyway, she changed her mind, and now she did want to go steady. And so I was like, oh, I've got to go confirm this piece of important information. And so I was like, hold on. And so I like headed out into the sunshine to like find Emily Mackenzie, or to pass a note to Cindy, to pass it back to Emily. I don't know if I ever barely talked to her other than want to go steady. And I abandoned my novel. And I remember there was a friend of mine in the school who was sort of like watching me, and the pages of the novel started to fly into the air like the wind, like when I opened the door of the classroom, because it was recess and I like was there working by myself. Opened the door and the pages started to fly, and this guy was like running around trying to catch the pages, like my liege, you know. He was like, or no, the liege is the leader. I don't know. Anyway, it was
the liege is like your assistant.
No, but you say my liege. The subordinate guy says my liege to the leader, right?
I think it's the other way around.
Anyway,
could be wrong.
We've never lived in feudal times, so forgive our ignorance. So I think we should figure this one out. But no, yes, my liege. No, it's yet it is. So then the other guy would not be the liege, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, he was running around trying to catch my pages, and it felt like this, you know, I was like the baron of something, and my novel was like flying through the classroom, and I was heading out into my romantic triumph of going steady with Emily Mackenzie, and you know, I never finished the novel.
And what happened with Emily Mackenzie?
I apologize. I should probably use her full name, but we went steady for a long time, but we never spoke. Like it was just like every holiday I would give her a bracelet that I bought in Chinatown. I would go to Chinatown and buy like a $12 bracelet with like a, you know, little fake pearl on it or something. And then I'd walk up to her, you know, Valentine's Day, birthday, whatever. I'd walk up to her and I'd go, here. And she would say, thanks. That was it.
Smooth.
And then eventually she sent me a letter that she was breaking up with me, and I was very sad about it, but I in retrospect I think I was not being a very good boyfriend, because I never spoke to her. I didn't know how. I was terrified.
Wait, how old were you? Like you said 9?
No, by that time I was 10.
Okay, 10.
And when she broke up with me, I was 11.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, so that was your first artistic moment. And at what point did art, because I know you, so I know that art for you and what you do is just and it's just obvious also from the nature of the subject matters of what you make films about. It's so part and parcel of you working yourself out, working out where you fit in the world, in the universe. Okay, when did those kind of feelings first come to you?
Which feelings? The feelings of wanting to...
The feelings of your work or your art being somehow tied to your sense of existence and understanding yourself.
Well, I mean, to some degree, I think I was always doing that partially. You know, I also attempted a different novel in high school that was sort of about me, but sort of about my sister's boyfriend who... Anyway, I want to talk about her experience, but you know, there were elements of things I observed and elements of things that I felt, but it wasn't until I made the short film Helicopter about my mom's death that I, for the first time, did something explicitly about my own experience. And then I kind of came back to this very personal storytelling later, again, with these two movies and with a novel that I wrote as well, which is, I mean, and this one I finished, but it's not out yet, but it may never be out. I don't know. It's a question, but it's radically autobiographical, I would say.
I mean, besides radical autobiography, I've seen it even in your film Adventures of Power, which is a comedy.
Yeah, a comedy about air drummers. So yeah, it still comes from my.
I see you in there.
Yeah,
you know, there is that thread that is in all your work. So I guess that's what I'm trying to get to is like how did that start for you?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe one thing is that I've never been driven by genre. You know, a lot of filmmakers love horror and they can bring themselves in some way into horror, let's say. And it still maybe has some personal elements. But I've always been driven by something that's a little harder to put my finger on. And it's never, oh, won't this be cool? This would be cool if, you know. And I think there are some filmmakers where like, oh, it'd be really cool if we have a scene where this, and that can lead to some fun stuff. I mean, you know, that would be like Tarantino would be an example of that, right? You know, I don't know him. I don't know him well enough. I mean, I don't know him at all, so I can't say I know what drives him. But there's a sense that like he does stuff because he just has a love for the way that scene will feel. It'll feel cool to him. It'll be exciting to him. But it's not coming from like deep work he's done on himself, on his psychology, on his what he's trying to bring into the world in terms of spiritual change or whatever. I mean, this sounds pretentious, but like he's doing stuff that he thinks will be cool, you know, and maybe as a kid he wasn't cool, so he wants to be cool, you know, so maybe there is a personal thing that drives him. But you know, when I made Adventures of Power, it did feel like I was telling a story about finding your own heartbeat, and I was doing it through this absurd epic about air drumming and copper mining and revolution. And I mean, the movie's totally insane. And when I've seen it again more recently, I'm like, this is really insane, and I can't believe I made this movie. And I think it's amazing, and I think it's a shame that it, you know, is barely seen the light of day. But I think it'll be a huge cult sensation in another 100 or 200 years.
Like Scarface.
Yeah, like Scarface. Scarface, which also actually lives largely on YouTube, where people watch, you know, scenes, including me, which are amazing, but, you know, it's not the same as watching the whole movie.
Yeah. Okay, so you just mentioned that when you were talking about Tarantino, that you think he's not doing something that's spiritually motivated.
Yeah, and again, I don't know him. So
I know.
You know, and
But I'm just bringing that up because that suggests that in your process, there is a spiritual drive or thought about it.
well, for better or for worse, it seems to be what drives me. You know, and I would probably have a more financially lucrative career if I wasn't driven that way. So I'm not necessarily saying it's better this way, but it's just how it is. You know, the stories that I'm telling, you know, particularly right now are abnormally personal, with the theory that by being so personal, I reach the universal, truly the universal, where people can feel changed by the film.
Yeah, and then
Hopefully,
I 100% feel that. I agree with it, because I take the same approach with what I'm doing in my music, and I really, in fact, like the name of this podcast, actually, I didn't even tell you, and the name of my album, although this one has the subtitle of it being podcast, is One Over Infinity. And the concept of the one over infinity is that we're all one, but we're all infinite fractions from that one. So you are you, I'm me, and that's valid. But we're actually also somehow part of the same thing.
where the drops on the ocean and the ocean at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so what does that mean to you exactly beyond the emotion? Obviously, your films are very personal, very emotional, especially what you're doing now. And also, you're trying to access, or you are accessing, the collective subconscious through your own personal, specific experience. But what does the word spiritual mean in this context for you beyond emotions of personal experience?
I don't know exactly what spiritual means to me right now. I mean, I've had experiences that I would liken to spiritual awakenings, because whether I've gone into another realm or I've experienced something transcendent. I mean, I meditate twice a day. I do transcendental meditation, thanks to David Lynch, twice a day. But I cannot say that I'm consciously reaching the transcendent. You know, I'm not like, la, in some, you know, I'd like to be. Sounds great. But I haven't had it as much as maybe I would like, you know, the kind of what I see as the spiritual experience. And, you know, I think the reason people will turn off their phones into a sound bath for 90 minutes is that people are craving the transcendent, and, you know, gong can help get people there. You know, it's sort of like gong can with sound do something like what ayahuasca could do, or acid, or mushrooms, or, you know, different types of hallucinogens. You can have a little bit of that, taste of that, while listening to gong. You can also have it doing breathing, you know, doing shamanic breathing techniques. You don't need drugs for it. You don't need a gong for it. You just need to breathe. So these things are available, but I don't necessarily have access to them in my daily life. I mean, I have friends who are much more porous, and they're able to kind of come in and out, and they're able to see spirits. And, you know, I know people who are like, oh, you know, oh, your mother is right behind you. She's giving me a message to tell you. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll listen, but I'm not sure. I don't have that kind of access. I don't, you know, I'm not that much of an open door into the spirit realms in terms of that use of the word spiritual. You know, but I guess your question is, what does spiritual mean? I mean, for me, when we're using a word like that, it's about whether something is reaching for the transcendent or is with the transcendent, or is the transcendent is communicating with this plane. And by transcendent, I mean that, someone else might use the word God. Flow also can be transcendent if you're really in flow. And that would be like, the Tao of Taoism. When I've had moments in my life. I'm filming this action adventure thing that I'm raising money for. I went to Brazil to shoot a test for it, and I really went into a kind of a Tao state where there was a rainstorm, and I lost one person I knew in Brazil, and then I just sort of followed my instincts and ended up meeting someone who took me into this favela, and they were like, how do you get in the favela? They gave me permission, and then the next day we were just improvising in this favela, and it was all flow state. If I had planned or tried to figure out how to do that, I never would have figured out how to do it. But I just went with the rainstorm and following and talking to whoever so that was flow state, and it felt almost like a spiritual experience, just going with that, which is, something that you can train yourself to do. Train yourself to swim in the direction you want to swim, but still using the power of the river. I think most people, and certainly me too, at various times in my life and various projects, I'm jumping into a river and trying to swim upstream. It doesn't work. But if you can use the current in the right way, or maybe surfing would be another metaphor for it, you can use the wave in the right way, then you without even taking any power from anything, you can use the power of the wave or the power of the river, and your own force gets multiplied by 100 or 1,000 by being in that flow. And again, without taking anything, you're using it you're not reducing its power at all, which is amazing. But I can't say that I'm always in that state. But the reason I meditate twice a day, the reason I do these practices is because I know that power is there, and I know for my art as well as for my life, it's better if I have access to it. So I'll do anything all day long to have access to it, because it's very easy to get caught up in Instagram or spreadsheets or whatever it is you are doing to distract yourself or to try to swim upstream.
Can you talk through what happens to you in that moment of creation when an idea just hits you?
Well, I've experienced this, when I wrote the first draft of the helicopter short film, I was in that state. I wrote the whole thing in 2 hours. I'm going to describe what it feels like. Man, I'm having trouble. I've also had it editing the sort of helicopter ride sequence in the new film. I had to go into a state where I was like playing with the footage and, like conducting a live orchestra, but it's all of these shots and I'm doing this and I'm definitely going into a flow state. But what does it feel like? I suppose if I knew how to describe it, then I could get there every day, which I can't. You tell me. Like you've maybe you have an answer for this one.
Well, I feel it in my body. I feel it in my mind. Like I feel when I'm like sometimes when I sit at the piano and something just comes to me, I feel like I'm flying. I feel like I'm not actually there. I feel like I left myself and something else came, took over my body, got my fingers to do what my fingers are doing. And the me that's not there got displaced out of my body, but is still there and is just watching. It's almost like I left myself and I've and I got my iPhone out, although I have a Samsung, but anyway, and I'm like, and I'm like videoing myself being taken over by this external thing that's making my fingers do certain things, and I'm making a record of it, so when that thing leaves, I can go back and try and replicate what it did and build on it. That's kind of how it feels for me.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing. I don't know that I have that experience. I've heard about that kind of experience. I mean, when I play piano and something magical happens, to some degree it is unplanned, but that kind of like out-of-body thing of observing it and is... I don't know if I quite have that experience. But, you know, anytime I've been in a kind of flow state, I would say there's an element to which I'm not in control anymore. Or my conscious mind isn't in control anymore. But making movies is tough because, like, I mean, making music as well, like, there's so many details that are, you know, right brain stuff that you've got to, I mean, the number, you know, on Helicopter, 10 years, it's insane. The amount of things that, like, the things that I've had to organize and processing, you know, hours and hours and hours and hours of footage and trying to figure out what elements to use that will, because I've experienced it. I have to figure out what an audience that hasn't experienced it, what will trigger them or what will guide them in the right way. And that can be flow state, but it can just be like, all right, logically, if I give this detail here and this detail here, then the audience will put it together here, you know, and how many seconds and what can I remove so that they get there on their own, you know. And sometimes it's really like brain thinking rather than like, you know, flow musical creation. Sometimes I'm like really like mathematically with Helicopter, like a lot of mathematics about how to create an experience for an audience that, and understanding what details to give and when, and, you know.
Do you have a method for like integrating when you're thinking with your right brain and your left brain, or is it just happening when what needs to happen?
I mean, it's going back and forth, but I know that I want to be more in the right is the, I want to be more in the right brain. Sorry, I had it backwards before. Yeah. Because I always get it backwards. Right, the logical brain technically is the right brain, right?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Someone can comment on that.
Yeah.
And correct me. But I want to be more in the flow state brain. I mean, for Helicopter, I have a movie already, but there's a section that I haven't shot that I wrote in a flow state. And it's a scene where I go back in time and confront my parents. You know, I'm a director directing myself as a boy to confront my parents. It's a wild scene. And I wrote it in a flow state, and I want to include it in the movie. And I want to cast famous actors to play my parents as a kind of weird experiment where I'm doing this as a, you know, it's a director within the film trying to change his childhood. But my logical brain is like, okay, you don't necessarily need this. You could finish the movie without this scene. Then the other part of my logical brain is like, well, but it would be great to do this and cast these famous actors because then it'll be easier to sell the movie, both to a distributor and to an audience. And then I'm like, well, but my flow state tells me I already have a movie, so I'm just like, ooh, I'm already almost there, and I just finish it and I'm done. But then I'm like, but wait a minute, I wrote it in flow state, and I should honor that flow state by following through with this crazy scene and filming it. And then I'm like, fuck, I'm in this brain decision delirium, which is very unflow. And I'm like trying to figure out if I should even shoot this scene, which is hanging up the movie. The reason I haven't finished it is because of the scene. And I'm like, did I create this impediment to my completion as an exercise to come to the point where I can decide not to shoot it and just bypass it and be like, fuck it, I'm done. I get to be done. Or is it one of those things where like, yes, it's really hard to shoot this scene, but that's exactly why I should shoot it. I should do this crazy experiment and I won't say who, but there are some very famous actors that I'm circling to get to. And some people are like, you'll never get them to do it. Or they're like, it'll ruin the movie to suddenly see a famous actor in it, when it's been this hyper personal story. And I'm like, oh, I really don't want to ruin the trance that I'm creating for the audience. But then, the other flip side of that is, well, some of the filmmakers that I have liked some of their work, like Lars von Trier, don't back off when they're going to do something that's actually going to really piss off their audience and potentially have some of the audience walk out because they're like, wait a minute, you're ruining this movie that you were just had me, and now you're ruining it with this crazy idea. And then I'm like, oh, maybe it's okay to do that and piss people off. Some people won't accept that I'm suddenly going onto this totally crazy other tangent of like going back in time and directing, famous actor, picture someone famous. And I'm in the middle of this right now where I don't know. And I have like a friend who knows one of these famous actors that I really want and is forwarding a letter like to this person where then I almost want to, if this famous person, I wish I could say, but replies, which is not necessarily that likely, but if this person replies, my hope would be to say to him, okay, this is what I had in mind. You play my dad in the year 1980, but if you think that's crazy, maybe you just come on as executive producer and we put your name on the movie anyway, and you help me finish it, and include them in the process. And my hope would be if that person has actually dealt with these kinds of traumas that they're going to relate to the movie as a whole and be like, okay, let's get it to the finish line. But anyway, like I don't know. I'm trying to put myself into the flow and let the flow decide for me because I can't. I'm having trouble deciding. Yeah, this is an example of it. I don't know. I'm sharing something that maybe is a little wacky for anyone who doesn't know hasn't seen the movie or anything. But
no, it makes perfect sense. I mean, in general, as a concept, I find for me, I can say with like my new album, I recorded initially 2 albums, then I added a third, and it became a triple album. And then I was like, and it was, the songs were, I was very proud of it, like I felt like I did a good job on the whole thing. But like as a product or as a work to present, I was going back and forth between, whether it should be a double album or a triple album, or whether the third album is a separate album. Or
my God.
I was just, you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I was trying to understand, because like I got into this headspace where I was like, well, the album has to be a thing, like it's got a character. It's not just a collection of songs. It's a thing, right? And like, for example, like all the great albums that you grew up with, they have it's almost like they're a living being, like, so I'm like, I want it to be like that. And it just, I don't know, like it was so close. It was like 90% all the time, but I was getting into the same brain state that you were describing, where it's like I'm second guessing myself. It's like I got the songs, but it's like the sequencing and like how it all flows. It was just driving me crazy. And then this Iran war happened, and this song came out of me reflecting on the war and reflecting on the revolution 47 years ago. And it's only a 2-minute song with just 2 verses, and somehow it brought everything together. And it suddenly made me realize the third album is like its own separate, the third volume is its own separate album. And then this coincidence, right? When you're sequencing for vinyl, there's certain things like you can only have 20 minutes aside. And also like because of the way the bass kind of goes down in volume across as it gets closer to the circle in the middle. You have to sort of sequence it. So you got your bass heavy tracks at the start, and then you get more like chill tracks. Like every like fourth track has to be like a chill out track. And when I was like playing around with getting the sequence right to get both under 20 minutes and have that fourth track be chill, I just found a crazy thing that like all the songs on side A are like related to fire, and then all the songs on side B are like related to water, and then all the songs in side C are related to air, and on side D they're related to earth. And I was just like, this is insane. It just magically happened by itself. And when I saw that, I was like, sold. That's it.
Yeah.
That has to be the hand of destiny making the decision for me,
Wow. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to go through the brain hell to get to the flow heaven. Or, fortune favors the prepared, as they say, like all that preparation you do leads to the moment when you're in flow. I mean, in a way, maybe that's the consolation for how much time we spend in our brain work, is that maybe a lot of that brain work is necessary. But then the real magic happens when then you let go of all that and something emerges like earth, wind, fire, and water for you.
I mean, I always I'm not particularly a huge fan of jazz music, although I like it. I'm just not like a super nerd about it. But one thing that has always really hit me about jazz is it's probably the most you have to be the most accomplished type of musician to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the whole concept of it is just to throw out the rules and just let it free flow. But in order to get there, you have to follow all the rules and learn the rules back to front.
Yeah.
And I just thought that paradox is very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's, the great abstract painters are great representational painters, or used to be, maybe not now, but yeah. I mean, spend 10,000 hours on something and then it starts to feel like you're in flow.
Yeah. Do you find I saw that you meditated before we did this today, and you said you like to meditate twice a day. Do you find that when you're meditating, are you just trying to detach from everything, or are you actually do thoughts of what you want to apply yourself to in your work come to you?
No, I mean, I do transcendental meditation, which has a very specific technique that it's really simple. You can look it up. I'm not really supposed to. You're not supposed to talk about it. It's a very simple technique. It's a beautifully simple technique, but I'm not. I'll say what I'm not doing is I'm not consciously deciding to plan my day or plan what I'm working on. Of course, you end up doing that because your mind goes, or in Vipassana meditation, we talk about monkey mind, but you just go, it just goes into what it goes into. But with the transcendental meditation, the idea is that I'm just going back to the mantra in my mind and letting that process of going back to it easily becomes a kind of cleaning process that cleans out the gunk somehow, so that then I function better the rest of the day. So sometimes it's a relief and sometimes it's pleasant, but sometimes it's just, I do it the way you would do a workout, because then you're stronger later, I have done other forms of meditation that maybe have gotten me into a more a state where have access to those things. And David Lynch, when he talks about transcendental, he was able to dive into the transcendent, I think, much more in his meditations. That was his good fortune. Not everyone has that experience, but that's okay. For me, I've found it's okay that I don't dive in. I'm not suddenly in the grand ocean of, cosmic unconscious. I'm just not. But something's getting scrubbed clean so that I can move with more efficiency and clarity and quicker. I mean, that's the thing that, I've found that since I started doing that, I can work a lot faster, and not just in the sense of crappy fast, but in the sense of like, when you think about what being an artist or, almost anything that humans do, a lot of their time is spent deciding and thinking through something, and if you just get to the point where you can make decisions quicker, you save a lot of time. And then, it's like, I mean, sometimes it's even just emails, whatever. I got to go through the morning's business, and I call it like cleaning the brush, like a picture, like an old Italian man stepping outside of his building in some village in Italy, and with a broom and sort of cleaning the cobblestones in front of the building. I do that every morning, but it's emails, but I think of that old Italian man in my mind, like, but I can do that really quickly now, because I don't overthink my replies. I just reply, and I'll be, before I finish my coffee,
You're a machine. I've seen you do it.
Yeah, I'll go through 140 emails, and then I put down my coffee, and it's, 7:42 a.m. and I'm like, my inbox is empty. And for those who do, this kind of work, to have an empty inbox is incredible. And I'll do that every morning, not always to empty, but that's the goal, to get almost empty, and sometimes it is. Of course, it starts filling up again, but so does the Italian guy. The leaves still fall off the tree, and he still has to sweep in front of that building the next day too, and that's okay. But anyway, my point is that doing the meditation at 6:30, something's cleaner in me, so that I can move really quickly. And then, later in the day, I notice that, if I don't do my afternoon meditation at 4 or 5, I'll start to feel like something is not functioning. If I'm trying to work, or trying to do creative work, or trying to make phone calls, or trying to remember, any of 150 contacts that I'm trying to reach out to arrange a screening or whatever, that I'm, doing something to promote my film so I can sell it or whatever, all of that complex thinking starts to fall apart, and I'm not working well. And then I'm like, oh, right. It's time for my second meditation. Got to clean the tank. So I clean the tank. Yes. I would love it if it wasn't just cleaning the tank and I was in some like state with David Lynch, but I'm not usually. I'll have moments of it. I will have moments of something that feels like what you mentioned before, that question of spiritual. There are moments where I'm like, I feel taller, or like my brain is above my head, or there are moments that I have that are like that. The moments, I haven't had long periods of that during meditation. I did have it once during or more than once actually, but on a Vipassana, different type of meditation, but a retreat where I was silent for a few days, and I had some moments that were truly like floating.
What do you think is actually happening? Like, or what do you think is theoretically possible? Like, because you said that, like, you haven't personally had some of these experiences, but it sounds like you believe that other people have had in other people's experiences.
Well, I've had tastes of it, which allowed me to believe it. I've had much bigger tastes of it taking, hallucinogens, but I'm also have some I mean, I think those can be great medicines, but it's a little bit like, oh man, you got to take a drug to get that feeling. That's a kind of a bummer. So I'll try to have those experiences without drugs.
But what do you think the experience? What do you think is actually out there?
What do I think? Well, okay, so internally, I may have had theories that, you know, there's an expression that God is in the gaps or something, where, you know, basically things we don't understand are what we call God. So when they didn't know that the earth went around the sun, then the mystery of the stars was God. And now that we know that, we got to find something else. So anytime we don't understand it, like, oh, that's where God is, you know. So it may be that, let's say somebody who has greater telepathic powers, and I've met people who do. Some people might react to someone with telepathic powers and say, oh, that's proof of the spirit world, and that's proof of God, and, you know, because this is magic, right? Or you could say, well, 150 years ago, the notion that you could speak in France and hear your voice in New York would seem like magic, because we hadn't yet invented telephone lines or cell phones or any of these other things. So it might be that the telepathic person, at some point in the future, science will say, oh, there is a such and such wave that we couldn't detect before, and certain people, their neurons are on the same frequency of this wave. Whatever, I'm making up some pseudoscience too, but you know, there could be scientific explanations for, quote, religious phenomena in the future.
What do you think that is? Like, what?
Well, I don't. You know, I'm not a quantum physicist, and I'm also.
But do you have a sense? Do you have like, or do you feel like the human soul or any soul is eternal, for example?
I've had different opinions at different times in my life. I mean, after my mom's death, you know, there were weird magical things that we found in her journal and that we experienced afterwards, and where my brother and sister and I had the same horrifying dream at the same night, you know, but exactly the same dream. You know, there were things, telepathic things between my siblings and I, and also with my mom's journal, that, you know, made me think that maybe the soul was eternal, or that maybe that time bends in a circle so that people can see the future. You know, I had all these ideas at that time, because also I was, you know, in a state of shock and trauma, and in those states, one can have greater access to, or susceptibility to, false beliefs, or access to beautiful beliefs. I'm not sure, but both things can happen. Right now, I don't know. I've also, you know, more recently, you know, experienced a guru who was able to transform reality in front of me.
You mentioned that once.
Well, I don't want to talk about it in a way that pulverizes the experience, but I will say that I went to see a friend's teacher, who he said was quite powerful and had done healing on his body. And I had never met this person. I didn't really care. And I'm just sitting in a room with some other people and my girlfriend at the time, who wants to leave and go get ice cream on a Sunday afternoon. We were not, you know, acolytes. We were not apostles. We didn't care. We were just, it was like going to watch, you know, a TED Talk. I mean, it was just, you know, there was nothing spiritual going on in the room. So I say that to preface that then when he comes back and he says he's going to give us an experience, and again, just out of respect, I'm not going to go into the details of what the wording was for it. I'll have to think about whether I want to share all this stuff in detail. But anyway, he was able to transform, and this is, now is here where I sound like a crazy person. He was able to transform his face into other beings in front of everybody. I saw this with my own eyes. And it was it's the kind of thing that if you read an autobiography of a yogi, you know, there's yogis who are like fly in the air, and you're like, yeah, okay, this is the part that I'm not going to buy it, but whatever. Once I experienced that in person, I'm like, oh, this is literally what they're talking about. Like, if in autobiography of a yogi he talks about someone flying, then they were flying. Like, I no longer see it as metaphorical, because I saw him melt his face into, you know, but it was so, it was like a magic trick, to the point, and I've talked with my sister about it, who, you know, because she's done a lot of studies of like the Yoga Sutras, and, you know, and she hasn't experienced that with any teachers, but she's like, you know, that's a stage, and in a way, in those Yoga Sutras are like, it's sort of like, yeah, there's a stage when certain high-level yogis can like do things, do magic, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they're gods, or that they're just at an extremely high level of yoga, you know, where they can alter what other people perceive, or they can alter the reality of this plane temporarily.
Do you think he was altering reality, or do you think your
or
brain...
our perception? Yeah, and this is what I don't know. I mean, and then it goes into the question of like, what is reality other than our perception? You know, because, you know, maybe. I mean, certainly this, after my mother's death, this notion of different realities bending against each other, and that's how you can see the future, or that's how other people can share dreams or whatever, made me feel like the reality we're in is either it's an illusion or a projection, or it's just one channel on a TV with a lot of channels. So what I felt with this, you know, yogi guy was, I felt like he was changing the channel. It was almost like we're in the room and he was in an old school TV. He was turning the channel slightly so it's in the fuzz mode in between channels, and then he leaves it in the fuzz mode so you can see that other channels are there. But I wasn't necessarily going to the other channels, but it was like flickering through all these other channels, you know, and the room was changing colors. And again, I know I sound like a crazy person.
No, you don't sound crazy.
You know, to someone else, someone listening might just think, okay, this guy's really off his rocker. But like, here's the best proof that I have of my experience, which whatever you can believe it or not. But so this goes on for maybe, I don't know, 4 minutes or something, of like everyone around me glowing purple. And this guy, you know, he's a snowman, he's a king, there's a crown appears, a beard falls off. And I'm like almost like drooling out of one corner of my mouth, because I'm like, what the, you know, like I'm trying to take this in, but I'm also somewhat moved by it, because it's like, oh, right, this reality we're in isn't everything, which is a relief. Because if the reality we're in is everything, it's kind of depressing, because you know, we live in a messed up world. So anyway, I'm having this experience, but I'm like fixated and looking at him, and he's guiding us through. He's not saying that much, but he's talking about certain things, but his mouth is saying the same, but everything around him's changing, and then, but I don't want to take my eyes off him, because I don't want the experience to end, because it's so incredible, you know. And then it ends it. He's like, okay, now, and you know, and then we will be back here, and then everything just kind of snaps back to normal, like the channel just went back to 4. You know, it was in between 3 and 4 for a while. Now it's just, he flips it back to 4. If anyone's seen an old TV, and so I'm still looking at him, and he's back to normal. Everything's back to normal. All the purple glows around everyone has vanished, like instantly. The moment he said it's over, it just stops. And then my girlfriend, who's sitting next to me and had all of 10 minutes before, during the break in between his talk, like she had been like, can we just leave? And I'm like, oh, let's just stay. He said he's going to do an experience. I don't know what this means. So I know she wants to leave, and she's been sitting there wanting to leave. And I'm like, okay, so too bad she's too tuned out to have experienced what I experienced, right? Because I'm like looking at him, and then I turn slowly to look at her, and as I turn to look at her, she turns to look at me, and she mouths very clearly with her mouth, "What the fuck was that? So this girl who wanted nothing more than to just to take a walk and get an ice cream cone saw it too. She experienced it. So everyone in the room experienced it. So he changed the channel for everyone in the room. Either he changed the room or he changed our perception. I don't know which it was. But
here's the thing.
It absolutely happened, and that's just, you know, and as my sister points out, she's like, you know, that's a stage of a certain high level yogi, but it's not the highest stage. It's just,
that's wild.
You know, and the Yoga Sutras talk about guys who would get to this certain level and they get stuck there because they're suddenly like, they can do this incredible stuff, and people are like, whoa, and then some of them get essentially seduced where people think they're gods and all that. So because they have godlike powers.
Here's, like, listening to you tell that story, for sure, one thing, like, none of it sounds crazy to me, because, like, one thing just from physics that, you know, I know, and I'm not like a physicist, but I just know this from high school physics, is that particles are all vibrating all the time, right?
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as stillness. Like, you know, when I look at you and I see your face, right, and it's static, like, that's got to be a representation of my brain mapping an image for me, because your face is moving. Like, your face is full of billions of particles that are moving. So, like, if I was actually to see what reality is, it would be very shaky. It wouldn't be what I'm seeing. I know that. I already know that. And I don't even think of that as like some kind of spiritual thing. I already know that my eyes are like a filter of reality. And listening to that story, what it makes me wonder is if what he was doing is removing that filter from everybody, so that you're actually seeing the vibrations as they are.
Yeah, well, certainly that's how the people in front of me looked, because I was seeing their auras, a purple light around them shaking. But yeah, there were a lot of things going on. I mean,
so having had that experience and having seen that, where does that leave you in terms of what you believe about the fabric of reality, where you fit in with it?
Well, if I really think about that experience, I would say that it's a reminder that this reality is not everything. What the other thing is, I don't know. I can't claim to know. I haven't committed to a specific religious path that would say, okay, it's this is exactly what it looks like, and there's reincarnation, or no, there's an afterlife, or no, there isn't, or, you know, in certain tradition, you know, my father's perspective would be that you live on in the memory of others. Now, that can be a very pragmatic and boring sounding thing, or it can be a beautiful thing. Or like, oh, well, actually, from the point of view of particles and vibration, is that different than the afterlife? That, you know, if his perspective was more the Jewish perspective and my mother's perspective, atheist, but of a Christian background, would have been more the afterlife perspective. Like, are they the same? But it's just a different way of describing the same thing. I don't know what I feel, but I know that what we are living in is not everything. But I also know that I'm like, okay, well, but this is the channel that I'm on. So I'll try to make the most of this channel. I don't know how to jump between channels, you know, and I suppose when I meditate or do different practices, you know, but I would like to be able to jump channels. I would like to be able to see other realities. I have had glimpses through the kind of curtain opens for a second. I've had glimpses of other things, but
do you think your art does that?
That's the goal. I mean, certainly with Helicopter, that is the goal, is to take the audience into another state.
Does it do it for you?
Certain times when I watch it, but, you know, there's also, like I said, the 10,000 hours, or in my case, maybe 100,000 hours working on this movie, a lot of that is just trying to get it to work. It's like the technician side of it is massive. So I'm not like in this amazing state when I'm like, trying to figure out how to get, something that's 18 frames a second to like calibrate with, with something that's 20 to 3.98 frames a second, and there's a mismatch of the video frame rates, or whatever. I'm talking about some boring technical thing, but there's so many of those things.
How about before that, when you're in the script phase?
In the script phase, sometimes. I mean, that's where that scene that I want to shoot, I kind of went into the state a little bit when I wrote it. The first short film I made, I kind of went into that state when I wrote it. Certain times editing where the hard drives are working and they're not crashing and I'm not dealing with firmware problems, where I'm actually able to work, which doesn't always happen, but sometimes I am able to get into this state while I'm cutting, and I'm like cutting to music, and I'm working with the music, and I'm working with the footage, and I'm working with motion and opposing directions, and some of those scenes, I think one of the best scenes in the movie I made in that state, and I could feel it in the audience, in the screening you were at, and the more recent screening as well, like the scene with the helicopter ride, like it goes into a magical state, I think. For some people watching it. Again, they need to watch it. They need to not have it on their phone and stop it in the middle. And this comes back to this thing of like the sound bath and the experience. Like someone could take our word for it that our art does this, but unless they actually turn everything off and go into it, they're not going to know. They're not going to know. They're going to think, as David Lynch said, you think you saw the movie, but you didn't see the movie. You didn't see the movie if you didn't turn off your other shit. You didn't see it.
I mean, this
you
kind
think
of...
you saw it, but you didn't.
It's
kind like of... sex. You didn't. You like, you're in binoculars watching someone else having sex and masturbating is not the same as having sex with someone you love. It's just not. You think you saw the movie, but you didn't see it. You didn't see it. You have no idea. And I know this. I know this from, people even now as I'm trying to get the money to finish. Like, I know when someone watched it for real and they call me and they're like, holy shit. And then someone else is like, yeah, some really cool stuff in it. I'm like, yeah, okay. But
the generic comment.
Yeah, the person who says really cool stuff in it might have seen it in pieces. They might have seen it, 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 3 minutes. Then they're watching in the bathroom. Then they call their wife, and then they're, and they're like, yeah, some cool stuff. But they're, they've broken the symphony apart into like single notes, and it's like,
yeah, and so much of so much of the symphony, of many symphonies, and so much of, the way that you made that film is about setting up a payoff later on. And you have to go through the process of allowing things to sit with you, for you to sit with certain things that you're absorbing, so that when you get like 60 minutes into it and the thing that happens then, it only makes sense because of what you've seen.
Yeah.
Up to that point,
Not just up to that point, but at a certain time.
Right.
So, like, that's part of the problem, too, with the way people consume content now. It is like, someone could say they saw my movie because they saw it in parts. But if, the information, if the shot of, like, the toy, whatever, I'm making some stupid thing up, but, like, if there's a Bob Dylan song I use in the movie, and I use two versions. I use his version, which version we played at my mother's funeral, and then I also use the Patti Smith version. The Patti Smith version has a power, a special kind of power, because you've heard the Bob Dylan version about 22 minutes previously. So there's an echo of it in your brain, and then she starts singing, and it's the feminine coming alive through these masculine words, right? And that is happening when I start the ritual. I get on my mother's bicycle and I start writing. If you haven't experienced the Bob Dylan song 22 minutes before, and you took a break, or you went to the bathroom, or you called your wife, or you turned the movie off and went to bed and then came back to it the next day, you're not going to have the experience. You're not. You might have the information, but you're not going to have the experience at all. And that's where the David Lynch is so right. You're not seeing the movie at all. Like, it's not like, it's almost as good. It's like you literally haven't seen the movie. The same way someone coming in to see that guru, if they come in the back of the auditorium while he's giving us this experience and look at him from the side and like, oh, there's some guys sitting there talking. They're not having the experience. They're just, they're getting 0% of it. Not even 1% of it. They're not getting anything out of the experience. And this is the problem with the way people, quote, consume art now. They're not actually having the experience. If something's designed to be watched in 3-second clips, like some TikTok videos or whatever, then you are having an experience because that's what it's meant to be. But for like something that requires you to sit in something in time, in the span of what we call time, like a movie or a symphony or even, like you said, a song or an album or a double album, where this is why Spotify is so terrible, because they really make it so that you don't listen to albums. Like if you even if you could deliver a good song in a playlist that you might not have discovered, and the algorithm, quote, discovers it for you, just gives you the echo of someone else liking that song, and then you click that song, you're like, oh, I like that. You have to click the band and then scroll down. They make it so that you have to scroll to the word view album. View album is not in the top of the menu.
Right.
They make view album the bottom, so it's never on the actual. It's not on your phone. You have to scroll it, but it's that extra second. They really try to push people to not listen to the album. They want people in the playlists, and it makes me so angry because I think of all the artists like you who are making albums, or my brother, who are making albums where the album has its own experience and language. And my, the albums that I've loved, the way one song transitions to the next song, and the quiet of the fourth song giving the impact of the loudness of the fifth song or whatever, all those things, you can experience them intellectually, but you're missing the movie. You're absolutely missing the movie if you can't turn everything else off and close your eyes and hit play on song one and sit there for 45 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, or 33, however long the album is. And it's really a shame. I don't know what to do about it. It's I don't, in a way, get annoyed when I see people doing sound baths, because I'm like, all right, well, at least they're trying to do something where they shut off.
Oh yeah, it doesn't.
It's just too bad
that
they don't.
Me.
It's just too bad they don't do it for an album.
That's what I'm saying.
Or a movie.
It doesn't annoy me that they're doing it for the sound path. It annoys me that
not doing it for
exactly.
Yeah.
But this sort of going off into a little bit of a business chat, but like this kind of is why
buy low, sell high.
the thing that we were talking about the other day when we were going for a walk, when I was talking about reaching a smaller audience that are committed to your art rather than like a wider audience that's just like consuming. Mm-hmm. That's really kind of the ethos of it for me, because like especially with the whole AI movement and everything, like I really feel like I want to be a champion of other artists, and I want to be also myself being an artist, and I want to interact with an audience that appreciates art from me and from other artists. Like I would rather do that with a smaller audience that go deeper and have that whole 90-minute experience or whatever it is, than to have a wider audience that are just like cherry picking moments.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, you know, and I think you're going to relate to this, because I think a lot of what you've said about why you make your films kind of like alludes to this too. But to me, so much of this stuff is about that thing about using your specific experience to reach the universality of other people and build a bridge.
To help heal other people, because if we're all...
And heal yourself. It's
Yeah.
like we're all in it together, you know? And it's like, this is how we build bridges between ourselves. I don't know. That's kind of my...
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the point for me. The reason I make stuff is because I feel like there's something that I am in the process of healing, and if I can do it through what I'm communicating in a movie, then it's going to heal someone else. It's going to heal someone's relationship who's watching it, or their relationship with themselves or with their family member or whatever. And you know, in a beautiful way, I have heard reports of people having that experience with some of the things that I put out. And so that is really, and that's where the circle becomes somewhat complete for me, where I'm like, oh, that heals me to be like, oh, this stranger reconnected with her mom because of my movie, you know. And so then my mom's death has a meaning of, oh, okay, so this person wouldn't have been healed if my mom hadn't died that way, you know, in a way, like, not that it's one-to-one that way, but that is what I do it for.
It's beautiful. Amazing.
Was that a conclusion?
It could be. No, we can keep talking. I mean,
how long we've been doing this?
Huh?
How long we've been yammering?
I don't know. I've been enjoying it. Have you?
Yeah, no, me too.
All right, we can keep. You want to keep going?
I'm sure. I mean, I don't know. I do feel like that may have been a good ending, but
It is a good ending.
Yeah.
We can keep going. I mean, I was going to ask you if you want to hear, and I can cut it in or just
Yeah,
leave all
yeah.
this in too. But
should we play a song?
we can. Let's do it.
Then you can ask me. Remember, you can ask me.
That was pretty good.
What were you going to ask?
Well, I was actually going to say, because you just blushed over it real quick, but this movie, it started with a phone call or a contact with Jodorowsky, specifically as a form of therapy.
Yeah.
So before you...
Yes, I had no idea this was going to happen. I went to him for kind of spiritual therapy, and 10 years later, here I am.
Right. Okay. So that's a very interesting story, because nobody knows that who's watching this.
Right, of course, yeah.
right? So what was the first? How did you even seek this out? What was the first?
Well, I was editing my second feature film, The Song of Sway Lake, and I was lost and confused, and I had made some mistakes, and I was trying to get into film festivals, and I really felt like my life was almost like my life was over. I couldn't seem to get the movie done satisfactorily, or I thought it was good, but then it was getting rejected from festivals, and I was recutting it, and I was lost and confused and depressed and full of self-doubt. And I read his book, Psychomagic, where he writes about this form of, to call it therapy is maybe inaccurate, but he invented this thing called psychomagic, which only he does, where he listens to someone's trauma or problems and then comes up with a kind of act to perform that is almost like a metaphor or dream version of the act flipped on its head as a way of healing the trauma. So I thought, okay, this could be like a great double whammy of like getting spiritual help from this guy, and maybe he'll help me with my career too, because he's a famous director and I'm unemployed. So it was, or he'll make a phone call to the Cannes Film Festival and help me get my movie in there. There was like a sort of stupid fantasy type thinking, as well as I'm spiritually lost and he can be a mentor to me. So that was the impulse in terms of reaching out. It was like double in that sense. And I have a friend who had written a blurb on the back of one of his books, and so I said, "Oh, do you know him?" And he's like, "Well, sort of, but I have his wife's email address." So I wrote to her and I asked if he would do a psychomagic session with me, and I kind of gave my pitch as to what I needed help with, and a tarot card reading and psychomagic act reading, and he agreed to do it. So that's how it happened.
That's amazing. And okay, did it work? Like, did you feel in the process of making this film?
Well, you got to see the movie to find out if it worked, didn't you? Don't you? You want to cut to the end of the movie? Come on, you got to see Helicopter. Go to arigoldfilms.com and sign up on my mailing list so you can see Helicopter and find out if I was saved or if I'm still messed up.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that.
All right. If you want me to give a real answer, part of the real answer is I believe that in my specific case, the psychomagic act, part of it is to make this movie. So it ain't done yet. I'm still in it.
Ah, interesting.
So part of that's, I think, the reality. There were elements of the ritual that I think may have been healing, but it was the process of doing it all is what has been, because it's brought me into closer contact with my dad and brought me into closer contact with my own filmmaking mission. So, and those things are healing, or playing it for an audience and discovering people, having people be like, wow, something's changing in me because I watched this movie. That's healing for me to hear, because it's like, okay, good. It's worth it.
That really landed on me, by the way, because I was thinking to myself, even if this thing is a crackpot thing, it somehow actually has worked in a really magic way, that it's made you make this phenomenal movie. Okay, it's not finished yet, but whatever. I can already tell it's phenomenal.
It's getting there, just one inch at a time.
But
another 150 years, and I'll definitely have it done.
But it's so phenomenal. Like, it's such a something to be proud of. Like, really, really high level, and it was so deeply moving to me. So I just really was like, wow, Yeah, like even if it wasn't like healing in the most obvious way.
It's healing through the filmmaking process.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ritual itself, I think, wasn't enough. In my case.
Yeah.
It was turning the ritual into its own ritual for myself and the audience. Not just what Jodorowsky told me to do, but the film. And so that is the psychomagic, I guess, or the magic, and that is the purpose of art. Obviously you feel that way as well. That like, not everything has to be quite as intense as that, but if it's not doing some of it, I don't see the point. It's so hard to make things. I'm like, why would you make something if there's no transformational value of it for yourself and for other people? Like, there are easier ways to make money than that. There's easier ways to meet women than that. I mean, whatever motivations people have, they're like, I'm gonna do it for it's like, here we are in LA. I see so many people doing stuff. I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, wouldn't you rather grow tomatoes? Like, if you're not trying to do something transformational, like, what are you doing? I don't understand it. That's where I guess I come back to like the Tarantinos of the world, who are like, as an example, I think he just loves the texture of a certain kind of movie making and mashing together genre and his music tastes and all that, and for him that's just you feel his passion for it, his love for it, and it's not my thing exactly, but it's undeniable that his passion is real.
Yeah.
Then there's other people who are like, I genuinely don't know, because I'm like, I don't see the passion. I just see like they thought it would be cool if.
Right, exactly. Well, that's the key difference, I think, with Tarantino and many other people who make like movies that look like a Tarantino movie, but like
he actually feels that way. He actually is deeply passionate about those things,
right?
Which you feel.
You feel it, and he's really big into like world creation. Like if you take out the really cool blood spray effects or whatever, like just the whole concept of Kill Bill and or many of his other movies. I just went to that one because of the blood spraying, but like, like there's so many things within things within things. There's a character, I think, in Kill Bill that has the same last name as one of the characters in Pulp Fiction. And I think there's some kind of like, if you go on certain Reddit forums or whatever, like
people are
analyzing it, that they're brothers.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny
family.
because like we're both talking about Tarantino. Neither of us are obsessed with him, but I do think he is really good at what he does, and I use him as an interesting example because he's not, from what I can tell, it's not about human transformation. I don't think it is.
I think there's an element of that. I think there is.
Well, maybe in the sense that he's done a couple like revenge movies that are sort of like, in a sense, like Inglourious Bastards would be like the sort of rewriting Jewish European history to be like, okay, we got our revenge, or Django Unchained would be the same thing for the slave story. We got our revenge, or even like the Manson family's destruction of the hippie idealism. Once upon a time in Hollywood, we get to rewrite that to have a better outcome. So I suppose that in his weird way, it's like transformational. I don't know why are we talking about Tarantino?
I know.
I like him, but I brought him up as someone who's very different. But I guess I do
really
like him.
But I have always been very like moved by his passion. Like,
well, that's the thing. Clearly, if you're passionate about something, you're halfway there. I mean, become a new friend named Tracy Lehman, who's a director, made a great movie called Bob Trevino Likes It, and she said something last night. We were having dinner. She said, "My job is to light people up. My job as a director." she was talking about the casting process. And I was like, oh, that's good. Like, as a director, that is your job. You gotta light up the audience. You gotta light up the gaffer. You gotta light up the actors. You gotta light everyone up. That's a director's job. Is you're like in the middle of this thing, and like, if the flame isn't there, it doesn't fall apart. So, I mean, it's gonna fall apart. Yeah, that's our job, is lighting people up. I would say, like, you know, anyone making art, to some degree, that's your job, to light people up, because people often in their lives are not as lit up as they would like to be. And so if you can do it with a song or a movie, that you maybe don't always need to transform them. You just need to, like, get that flame going.
I got a random question for you. Mm-hmm. This is very out of left field, but it's something that came up in a conversation with someone recently. Cave paintings, right? Do you think they were art? Do you think they were expressions of art? Or do you think they were
diagrams?
Like, yeah, do you think they were like there for informational purpose or expression?
I don't actually know, but my gut tells me that they were expression.
Me too.
That they were art. That's what we would call art now.
I feel that because the reason I asked the question and the reason why it's relevant for me is because, to me, if that's true, which I believe it is, it really does say to me that there is something innate in us to have the need for art and to connect it, to express things that we can't express through language.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, other creatures don't do this. I love, dogs, for example. I love dogs, but dogs don't do this. This is a very human thing. A little child will paint on the shower, on the steam of a shower. They'll do something, this is human.
Yeah, like when people draw on a dirty car.
Yeah. It's cave painting.
Yeah. All right.
Well, all right.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Ari.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
So you're in both of these movies,
Oh.
Because your voice is in a helicopter.
Yes.
And playing a newscaster for like 4 or 5 seconds. And your piano's in Brother versus Brother.
Oh, amazing. I'm honored.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.